Hi, this is Stuart J. Raj, and welcome to my MINDKRAFT Language Brain Builder 1 program. Now, this is the prep series. So you've enrolled and you're waiting for the first session to start, but there's a whole lot that's going to happen between now and then. And actually, MINDKRAFT is much more than just 11 sessions with me. And so what I wanted to do with you now is a couple of things. The first thing is to give you an overview of what the program is all about and what you'll be doing. And then the next will be to show you what you can do yourselves to prepare to really get the most out of this program. Now, MINDKRAFT Language Brain Builder is all about getting the mind, your body, your muscles, everything in gear so that you can maximize, you can optimize your learning capacity or your ability to learn languages and the language that you've chosen. We'll be getting into that as well. Now, you might notice though, as we go through the program, that I have actually quite a heavy weighting on tech. Now, for anybody who knows me or heard my stories in the past, from when I was a kid, you would see that tech actually played a big role, and originally that was thanks to my grandfather. And I have realized that having technical abilities to work with tools and even better, build tools to help me learn actually works as a learning tool. So the actual building of tools is a learning tool that for me is probably better than any other tool out there. You might notice there are a bunch of tools and things out there on the internet to help you learn a language. And many people use these tools without a lot of success. But what I've found is if you actually spend time in building your own learning resources, those things have a tendency to stick more. So what I'll be doing is providing you not only with linguistic knowledge, skills, and things that you can embed into your body, but I'll be giving you some tech skills that are also going to help you work with and make tools to not only learn languages, but actually I use this skill set across every subject or every part of my life, whether it's in working with clients, word processing, writing articles, writing books, learning languages, putting reports together, you name it, you can actually put these skills together as well. So it's not going to be a waste. So we're going to go through an overview of what the MINDKRAFT program is. So if you open up the main landing page of the course, and you can see here we have the course objectives, installing a sound system and writing frameworks that will support these languages, increased thought fluency. We'll be getting more into that. But thought fluency is about how you can, have you ever started to speak another language, but then you spend so much time trying to think what you're going to say, and the language comes out unnaturally, or for some people doesn't come out at all. So we're learning how we can actually start to take control of our brains and get fluency with our thoughts and have our muscles start to work almost independently of what our brains are doing. We'll be able to learn to escape our mother tongue's language filters and sound filters and start hearing sounds outside of our mother tongue sound system. Not only hearing them though, we'll be able to notate them independently, so we know when we see this is the sound in this language, not in our mother tongue. And most importantly, we'll be able to reproduce them. We'll be learning data manipulation tools, so we can start building our own resources. And as you do this, you're going to find you're just going to want to learn more and more and more. Every second of your waking day and your sleeping day, if you start to access your brain correctly, you're going to be learning. We're going to learn memory techniques. Now, they're not necessarily the memory techniques that you might see in mega memory programs. We'll be learning about those, but I'll show you actually what tends to work and what doesn't, and you'll be able to choose yourself which you want to use. Some have certain uses, some have limited uses, others are things that you'll be using every day. You'll be learning to build an environment around you that teaches you the language, which is critical. You won't actually have to go to a school if you do all of this properly, and you'll be able to learn how to control your brain through the day. So, first session, we have session 1. So here we have it as number 2 here, escaping our own brain. Now, this is fundamental. Escaping our own brain means that we have a whole set of filters, whether it's cultural filters, language filters, sound filters, that are put on us from the culture that we're born into and the language or languages that we're born into. So this first session, we're all looking at getting out of our brain both in sounds, in language, and learning to start to access our voice in ways that we've never done before. But more importantly, we'll actually learn how to start to access our minds and start to decouple things between the way we think, what we speak, and how we say it, and how we string meanings together, whether it's actually in our mother tongue or later on going between mother tongues. This is a fundamental lesson, so you can't miss lesson 1, and we'll also be learning the sound matrix, and this is a matrix of sound that is based on a map of the human mouth that was developed 3,000 years ago, and it's still very valid today and applicable across all languages. Session number 2, we'll be looking at the first words of any language. When you learn a language, what do you learn? What words do you do? What should you learn first? So we'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at different strategies that are there, the pros and cons of those strategies. And actually, one part of that is looking at the 12 golden sentences. Many of you might have heard of Tim Ferriss. And so we'll be going through the 12 golden sentences that he's constructed to deconstruct language and looking at the pros and cons of those and things that you're going to have to take into consideration if, say, you're learning languages across Asia, Chinese, North Asian languages, Southeast Asian languages. There are little things that you can do that are going to give you an advantage in those languages. And then we'll be looking at what words you should learn first and actually how to build some resources based on those words that are customized to what you need, what excites you, what entertains you, and what you're going to learn best from. In session number 3, I call it total recall. And this is getting into those memory techniques that we spoke about. And I'll show you, I learned a bunch of memory techniques from my grandfather when I was young, from the major method to the Roman room, to just normal mnemonics and a bunch of other things. So we'll be going through different techniques and I'll show you where they can be useful, where they're not normally useful. For example, just remembering 10,000 individual items is not actually going to give you a facility over those, say, words or vocab items in the language. So we'll look at how to balance these things out. But memory techniques are all about how can you extend that RAM period in your brain, the random access memory, so that it can be manipulated and you can do things with it, so those new things that you learn go into the long term. So we'll be looking at that, and then we'll also be coming back to the sound system, and in this time Korean. And you'll realize from the first session you will actually have received phenomenal grounding in Korean already that will take it to the next level. Session number 4, I call Chinese whispers. Now, Chinese is a language that a lot of people are learning, or a lot of people might want to learn, or are thinking of this as being one of the key languages in the future. And so learning, having a grounding in Chinese is going to be very, very useful to learning not only Chinese, but a bunch of other languages. For example, the Chinese characters are used across in Japanese and even in Korean. I find my grounding in Old Chinese really helps me in Japanese and Korean and even Vietnamese, even in Thai. There are different facets from Chinese that can help you. So we'll be looking at core things to do with sound in Chinese, first of all, and then we'll be looking at actually the balance of when you see Chinese characters, because this balance also goes across into other languages, and you'll be able to start to embed that balance of language physically into your muscles, and it's going to help as you learn other languages, not just Chinese. In session number 4, we'll be looking at playing with brain states. Praying too, but playing with brain states. And this is a lot of fun. Some of you might have seen the Morse code clip and sign language clip that I put out years ago. I wrote a song, and through watching this clip about 3 times, you'll get Morse code and sign language concurrently, simultaneously. And we take that a step further, and I'll use that as a ground, as a base, so that we can actually start to train our brain to hear messages and see pictures but through methods that might be brand new to you. And this is directly applicable to then when you're learning a new language, because you're going to be learning foreign sound systems, foreign structures, but then training your brain to start hearing these sounds as a beautifully orchestrated piece of meaning. So you'll be learning how to learn the functional tools of those systems. So in this case, maybe sign language or Morse code, or other things. But then you'll be learning how to start to hear these things actually as chords and meanings, not just as individual mechanical pieces of a system. We'll be looking at the shapes of Thai. Now, whether you're learning Thai or not, I've chosen this because there are some fascinating things that go on here. We'll be looking at how shapes in a language are seen differently by native speakers of a language versus learners of a language. And once you've been able to do that, you'll start to learn how to see shapes and patterns in shapes between languages. I'll hold that as a surprise, but I think you're going to surprise with yourself with what you can do with pattern matching and actually transferring the knowledge from one language across to other languages and other systems that share maybe a common system or at least something in common with one language. And of course, this is going to help you not only with Thai and say related languages, but any language that you use that has relative languages, you're going to be able to get leverage from those languages. In session number 7, we'll be looking at Bahasa Indonesia. Now, a lot of people will call Indonesian Bahasa. That's wrong. Bahasa just means language. But we were looking at Indonesian and Malay languages. Now, some people say they're different languages, mainly for political reasons, but it's really a gradient of language that goes across there. In Indonesia, you have a bunch of dialects that also start to color the local language used no matter where you are, and the same in Malaysia. So what we're going to be doing is looking at what many people might say is a super simple sound system, but then look at how this is realized in writing, and then the differences between, say, the Malay that you'll hear in Kuala Lumpur versus the Malay or Indonesian that you'll hear in Jakarta, or even someplace like Surabaya. And we'll learn to play with the sounds of those languages. When you see it, learn to say, oh, this must be Malay, not Indonesian, and vice versa. And you might even be able to start to shift the way you say these sounds, depending on what part of the Malay/Indonesian speaking world you are. On top of that, we'll also be learning little building blocks. Now, Malay and Indonesian have these wonderful prefixes and suffixes that can be just clipped on like Lego to a relatively small amount of base root words, and you totally grow out your semantic database and your ability to make meanings in the language. So we're learning some of those, and even from day one, you'll realize that you're going to start to get a facility in Indonesian or Malay that you may possibly wouldn't believe that you would get in such a short time. Session number 8, we're going to look at data-driven learning. Now, this is where it comes in. Now, you will see from all of the support materials I have, there's a lot of stuff there built on getting some data skills, and this is so that we can build our own tools. In session 2, we already started looking at little things like building our own style sheets and HTML documents so we could have bilingual text that we could learn from. Now we're going to put that on steroids, and I'll show you how you can start to pull data in from different places and build out spaced repetition Anki decks. You can build your own books, glossaries, bilingual text, speech, so text-to-speech engines, your own spaced repetition programs where you sit and listen to new vocabulary every day.
160. Job.
Il lavoro. Il lavoro.
161. Religion.
La religione. La religione.
162. Heaven.
Il paradiso. Il paradiso.
This is a super fun lesson, and it's super powerful, and these skills you can actually use right across different subject areas as well, not just languages, but we'll be using it for language. In session 9, we'll be looking at dialects and languages. Now, if you go to some countries, they might call what some people call a dialect a different language. Some other countries will call what other people call different languages different dialects. We're going to look at what dialects and languages are and have some fun learning tools jumping between dialects. And so the easiest ones that you've already had a grounding in by this time will be Thai and Lao, and then Malay and Indonesian. But then I'll show you by the end of the session different ones that we could do. So even say between Chinese languages, or even things like Vietnamese and Chinese. The same principles are going to apply, and you're going to be able to use this to leverage language from many more resources than you might have had if you were learning just through the resources for one individual language. Session 10. Now we're almost at the end, and I call this Xin chào Vietnam. And so Xin chào means hello Vietnam. So almost good morning Vietnam, Robin Williams, blast from the past from the 80s. But Xin chào Vietnam, we'll be looking at the sounds of Vietnamese. Now, the reason why I've chosen this is way back in session number 1, we looked at the sound matrix. And that same sound matrix that you learned, and the ability to adapt your voice and get little nuances in sounds and then lock them into muscle patterns and mouth patterns and actions in your mouth and throat, but also into letters. You're going to learn how to map the letters of the Vietnamese script into the sounds of Vietnamese, and even be able to differentiate between the sounds of, say, Northerners and Southerners in Vietnam. So we'll be getting the sounds of Vietnamese and leveraging what we already know from our sound system to be able to start to sound particularly good in Vietnamese, even if you've never learnt the language before. And at the very least, if you have Vietnamese colleagues or say business in Vietnam, you're going to be able to pronounce people's names or place names correctly. In the final session, now you will note during the prep notes that I said pick a language that you're going to use as a target language throughout this. And this course is a vehicle to apply those things and learn the language. It doesn't have to be a language that we've covered during the program, because you're going to be able to apply all the principles. Well, session 11, the final session, we're going to be celebrating that, and everybody is just going to just quickly present one way that they've built tools or used the knowledge from this and made some real physical thing that has helped you learn. This is really exciting. You're going to be getting tons of examples throughout that, and I'll be there to help you throughout the program. But we're going to be celebrating success in this final session, and we're going to be looking at what we're going to be able to do next to take our language that we've already started on to the next level.